nonetheless. He's a technical lead for workplace noise and vibration. He specialises in inspection and investigation of workplace noise, HAVs and whole body vibration. His current role is to develop and promote HSE's technical standards for workplace noise and vibration. I did take a quick look at HSE stats, and what surprised me, Chris, was that it's the estimated 300,000 people suffering from HAVs. So, without further ado, a big thank you for presenting. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious that I'm not going to be able to give you everything that's in the regulations and the guidance in 20 minutes, and I also suspect that you want me to be a lot quicker than 20 minutes because you want to go home at some point. So I'm going to try and keep this relatively neat. I'm going to talk to you about what the problem is when it comes to HAVs. I'm going to talk to you about what you can do to help spot HAVs as a risk, and then I'm going to tell you about what you can do to help spot it as a control. So what is the problem that we're currently facing? Well, HAVs is a problem for industry. What I typically see on site is this. Now, normally we talk a lot about your loss of workers and their health, but actually the productivity is a significant issue when it comes to HAV. What we see is that the duty holder will employ somebody, they will get them to use power tools. That person will present with ill health, with vibrational white finger. They will reduce the amount of activities that they can do, their productivity will go down, and then they'll let them carry on working, and then they'll reduce their activity again. And what they're effectively doing there is hoping beyond hope that that individual will get to the point of retirement, and they're rolling that dice that they'll get to retirement before they get to a disabling level of HAVs. We've got a set of regulations which essentially allow the duty holder to allow the employee to get ill, just not too ill. Now that isn't really the way it should work, and that's highly, highly dependent on you having good health surveillance to make sure that you are spotting when they're getting ill and reducing exposure. Now, as I say, that's not how it should work, and I will tell you how it should work later on and show you some examples. But we've been asking duty holders to identify health surveillance as a risk that they require, and we've found that on about a third of the sites we're going to, where they need health surveillance, they don't have health surveillance. In addition to that, remember, you're getting people in to help you identify HAVs as a risk. 100% of the occupational health surveillance providers that our inspectors have said they should get a visit from the occupational health team have received some sort of enforcement. So there are questions about whether or not people have health surveillance, and there are questions about whether or not the people you're getting to do it are giving you a good level of service. The thing that I come back to is this. I believe the government's currently saying they want to try and reduce your health and safety compliance costs by 25%. I suspect that the way that you're going to try to achieve that is by improving on the types of services you're getting from third-party providers, that you're getting good service and good quality information from them. So it's a problem for the duty holder, not just because people are going to get ill, but also because there's productivity issues. The problem for us as the regulator, 62% of all the ill health RIDDORs that are coming into us, so not all the RIDDORs, just the health ones, are from HAVs and CTS, so both issues that are usually associated with the use of power tools. It's a problem for the worker. Workers who progress to stage 2 late, hand-arm vibration syndrome, are no longer able to work with power tools. That is the reality of what is happening. What does that look like when we go and speak to people, the people that I've spoken to, the people that I meet when I'm doing inspections? Well, I spoke to a person not so long ago, not long after I started, 54 years old, highly specialised mechanical engineer, made to retire. Now, they were made to retire because, I think currently at the time, it is 55, is a retirement age that you can start to take your pension. That is moving up to 57, so that option is disappearing for that type of person. 43-year-old welder made redundant because they were told they could no longer carry on doing the job and not use power tools. This is somebody with a mortgage, a family, and they're being told you cannot do the job that you've been trained to do. And not only can you not do the job you've been trained to do, you can't go and do other jobs that involve the use of power tools. So the idea of getting work cutting grass for the council is a non-starter for that individual. This was probably the worst one I came across. 24-year-old construction worker told to retrain 3 years after they'd completed their apprenticeship. These are all things which are pretty bad for the individual, but they're bad for the company. The productivity options there for a company are really bad. You're losing well-trained, competent individuals who can do their job properly, some of them at a very young age. So can we spot a vibration risk? How would we spot what is a hand-arm vibration risk? We will typically see this type of thing. Someone's using a road breaker for 30 minutes, palm sanders for 60 minutes, or strimmers for 4 hours. Which one of those is the worst? You'll be glad to know I'm not going to get you to try and answer that. I'll just show you the answer. It's not always as intuitive as you think it might be. You know, the heavy road breaker, something that's considered to be a really heavy duty tool, actually has probably got one of the lowest levels of exposure because of the amount of time that they're using it for. So how can we spot where a risk is? This is what we say to our inspectors. This is how we train our inspectors, for them to start asking questions about halves. We say to them, if you see someone using an impulsive tool, a road breaker, an impact drill, and they're using that for more than 15 minutes a day, they're likely to be above the action value. That organisation should have some sort of risk assessment. For rotating tools, crosscut saws, grinders, that type of thing, an hour's use, and we're talking about trigger time here, how long they're pulling that trigger for, an hour of that, they're probably above the action value. They should have a risk assessment. One of the things you hear the inspectors asking about a lot is job and task. That tells you that you should be thinking about it. You go to a construction site, you can hear somebody using a crosscut saw. That's been going on the entire time I've been here. I'm going to ask you, what is your exposure? Well, but we talk about job and task. You've got someone that's making a fabricated metal item. What they're doing here is they're going to grind that before they weld it, and then they're going to clean those welds with a grinder. And so we asked them, well, how long does it take you to do 50 mil of prep and 50 mil of post-weld grinding? How many of those are on that piece that you're making? How many of them are you producing? And some companies are really good at this. I've come across construction companies that are really good at this. One of the dry rock contractors that I know of, they can work this out at the costing stage. So when they go to site and they measure up to cost a job, they can, at the end of that process, with the price of the job, they've got X number of halves points associated with that work, and they know how many people to send to site, and they know how many days they can do it over. So, job and task, is that likely to be more than 15 minutes or an hour, depending on the type of tool that they're using? That's probably above the action value, and we want you to concentrate your activities on control. We would like you to use our online calculator. The reason why we'd like you to use our online calculator is because it calculates the exposures in the way that it should be calculated. It has drop-down menus. It's got initial exposure values or magnitudes for the tools. So you've got a number to start off with, and the only bit that you have to convince an HSE inspector of is how long you spend doing your job. And if you're telling me that it takes you 45 minutes to do that, I'm not going to argue with you about that, because I don't know how you make that thing. So you tell me how long that takes, I'll believe you. You use our calculator, I'm happy with the result. If it's above the action value, I'm going to start asking questions. Because we need to pause for a second, and we need to ask ourselves, what is the regulator's minimum expectation for a duty holder? Our minimum expectation is not that you're trying to figure out down to the nth degree what you're exposed to. Our minimum expectation is an inspector is going to ask the duty holder, what are they doing to control risk, no matter how much monitoring or how much measurement they have. Risk control is what we are looking for. So how can we spot vibration controls? What can we look for that are obvious things? Right, I'm going to show you an image. This is a workplace, a genuine workplace that we visited, and I want to see if you can spot any hand-arm vibration controls in that image there. Again, I'm not going to be horrible and pick on anybody, I will tell you, but some of you are probably looking at those little orange boxes on the end of the grinder there. That's a monitoring system, that thing there. That's used to tell them how much time the person's accumulating on that tool. That is meant to be on the tool, because it's triggered by the vibration from the tool and it sets a timer going. I suspect that one might be just about working correctly because it's close enough to the bottom end of the tool. I'm pretty sure those two aren't. I'm pretty sure that they're not really measuring the vibration off the tool because they're meant to be on the tool, not under the desk being kicked by his hobnail boots. Right, so again, just pause for a second. What's my expectations? What am I looking for? I'm not looking for measurement and monitoring. I'm going to ask the duty holder what they're doing to control risk, no matter how much monitoring data they have. Now, how much of those numbers from those orange boxes they can show me, I want to know what are you doing for control. Let's go back to that and let's ask ourselves, can we see any control measures that are in there? Okay, I'm going to tell you again what they are. Don't worry, I'm not horrible. Well, what have we got? Well, he's wearing gloves. I like that. That means he's staying warm. He's not wearing anti-vibration gloves. We're not massively keen on them. You really have to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that they actually work. But for us, gloves to keep your hands warm when it's cold, that's a control measure. That grinder, the orange one, that's got a flapper disc on it. And that's usually a good way of reducing vibration from a grinder disc. So that's control. The consumables that they're purchasing indicate control. There's a nice big box of sanding discs sitting there, which means that he's not wearing that disc down to absolutely nothing, that he's got plenty of stuff there that he can swap it out for. So having a supply of sharp, good quality cutting tools, that type of thing, that's indicative of control for me. He's got another pair of gloves there as well, tucked into the corner. Well, that means that if those ones get wet that he's wearing, he's got something else to put on. So that's a good bit of control for me. And what else has he got? Well, he's covered the desk with a rubber mat, which will be reducing vibration from those products there. So these are all things that demonstrate to me that this is an organisation that, okay, they're not being particularly good with their monitoring, but they are trying to do something to control their exposures. And that's what we're looking for. What can they reasonably, practically do to control their exposure? So what are you expected to do? What are the basic expectations of the control of vibration at work regulations? Well, we want you to know what your risk is. Remember, an hour, 15 minutes, tool types. Have we got a risk assessment? We want you to know who needs health surveillance. It's really important that people who should get health surveillance are getting health surveillance. We want you to know who needs information, instruction and training. People should know that this is how we use the breaker. They should know that flapped grinding disc, which can reduce vibration, will be doing quite a good job for the one that's furthest away from me that I'm pointing at, but the last one that's closest to me will be doing sweet FA, given that it's been ground down to nothing. We really want to see you holding a control list. What have you done? What are you doing to control? What are you in the process of doing? What's your long-term plans? In 6 years' time, we're hoping to replace this machine with a new one, which is lower vibration. This month we're buying plastic backing pads for our grinder discs. Also, and you may not appreciate this, it can be very beneficial to you as a duty holder to actually tell us about the things that you've done in the past, because we are coming in as inspectors and just seeing what you're doing now. And so for us, that's the benchmark. But if you turn around and say to me, yeah, but 4 years ago, the guys were spending 90% of their time using angle grinders. We changed it for this system, this machine. You can show a journey of we've changed what we were doing, we're still changing, we're trying to improve what we're up to. We also look for a purchasing policy. We expect you to try to buy vibration efficient tools, not just low vibration, because sometimes you can buy things which are very low vibration, but they take 5 times as long to do the job. So we're interested in, does it do the job just as well, if not better, than the product you're using just now, and will it do it at a lower level of vibration? And if the answer to that is yes, then you should purchase that. And then I'm going to look to see if you've got warm clothes, gloves, hats, scarves, macaroon bars, things that keep you warm. I'm also going to look to see if you spent any time whatsoever checking to see what HSE says about what a vibration control is. That is one of our guidance documents, HSG 170. Some of the stuff in it is very old. Now you might go, well, that's very old, I'm not going to bother looking at that. I would advise you to look at it, because if there's things in our guidance that's very old and you're not doing it and you don't have a good reason for not doing it, you're very likely going to get enforcement, because that's what we use to say this is what a reasonably practical control is. If you really want to know what it is sector by sector, take a photograph of that. I'll pause while you take a photograph of that. That is the web address for our operational guidance. In the back of that, there are tables like this, and on those tables it will say, if you see somebody doing this task, this is the control measure that should be in place. It also gives you some indications of what the vibration magnitudes are. But that is what our inspectors have on them, or have in the office, that they look at before they go out to a construction site, to a metal fabrication site. They will look at that and they will say, oh, I'm supposed to be looking for, drilling rigs, whatever. And if they don't see it, they will ask questions, and you're in a position where you might get enforcement if you're not doing it. Also check your industry guidance. There's a lot of industry guidance out there on how to reduce vibration exposure from concrete piles, from constructional steel, from you name it. There's loads of it. Right, I'm going to give you an example on how health surveillance and control should work, mainly reducing the cost of compliance. So this again, another site we were at. In this place here, one of the things that they do is they make these things called pipe stubs in a stubbery. So that's a place, a stubbery is a place. And effectively they're made out of fiberglass, they're built up, and the form and the shape is then produced using a jigsaw and a grinder. So it produces a lot of noise, a lot of dust, and a lot of halves exposure. Remember when I spoke to you earlier on about the productivity issue? What we've got is people working on that, making that, who are getting diagnosed with halves, being told you need to spend less time making them, even though we need 500 a day or whatever. They reduce the exposure, they reduce the productivity, the person's still exposed to vibration because they're still using power tools, and at a later date, more ill health ensues, and they try to reduce the exposure again. That isn't how it's supposed to work. The way it's supposed to work is that we have our risk assessment that outlines what our control measures are or should be. Within those control measures will be things like maintenance, tool purchasing and training, and the health surveillance is at the end as a backstop to check to see if these controls have worked. And it should identify to you, if there's ill health, that something needs to be reassessed here. So that is what this company did. They got a diagnosis, a really early stage diagnosis of halves, and they said, let's go and look at how we are making those pipe stubs. And they changed their process. They changed the process to basically a pie dish, where instead of them cutting it to shape, they form it to shape as they're making it, and then they tidy it up on a lathe. They take that little bit of skin off the top on a lathe. We no longer have our vibration exposure. There's none now. When I was there, I asked the guy to show me his power tools, where he kept them, and he had to go and get a key and get them out of a locker. Before, he was using them every day of the week. Now he isn't using them at all. So we've got no vibration exposure. We've got really no noise exposure at all. We've reduced really significantly the amount of dust that this person's been exposed to. But in addition to that, that process is a lot quicker. It doesn't use as much materials, so they're saving the company money and they can make more of them more quickly. So done right, what we should see is somebody who's using power tools, they get an initial diagnosis of halves, the reassessment of the risk and the reassessment of what they're doing should identify controls or make them think about how they're going to control it. And that, in that instance, has increased productivity, which allows them to work on past retirement, which is what that person wanted to do. So the company gets to produce more things for less money. They get to keep a highly specialised, highly trained worker, and the worker gets to carry on without being made ill. So, I talked to you about what the problem is. There's a lot of people getting exposed to halves, and it's a debilitating disease in and of itself that can impact on the productivity of the company and can impact on the ability for people to actually earn a living. Can we spot vibration risk? What did I say? 15 minutes with an impulsive tool, probably above the action value, do something about that. Rotating tool, an hour, trigger time, we've got a risk assessment. Can we spot controls? Yes, there are plenty of controls out there if you think about what you're doing, but remember, there's loads of information on HSE's website about it. So I'm going to finish, because that's 20 minutes, and you'll be glad to go away early, but I'm going to ask you to do me a favour, right? Not you, all of them.
Can I get the mic?
Yeah. I want you to help me. genuinely want you to try this. The next time you're on site, can you please try one of those things? Can you try that rule of thumb? Remember, 15 minutes or an hour. If you go somewhere, if you're sat in a site hut, and you hear a power tool being used, ask yourself that question. The other thing is, why are we buying that? Have you got a purchasing policy? And then the last one is go and have a look at that advice, that HSG 170, or the web location address I gave you. Now, some of you might want to ask me questions when there aren't other people here, and so that's my contact details.